Welcome to this episode of Crafting for Profit Live. This is episode 27 of the podcast, and today we're talking about physical organization of your crafting space. Whether you're working from a tiny corner in your bedroom or you have a full-fledged studio, we're going to share practical tips to declutter, organize, and optimize your space so that you can get maximum productivity and make more money.
We've actually pre-recorded this episode, but if you are watching on YouTube, we will still be chatting with you in the live chat. So if you have questions, comments, want to chat with us, feel free to do that in the live chat. And if you missed that live chat, you can ask your questions below. Or if you're listening to this episode on your favorite podcasting platform, in the podcast notes, we have a link to a form where you can always ask us questions, even if they're off topic.
Let's start today's episode by talking about why it's important to get organized in your crafting space while running a business. So organizing your workspace is not just about making things look tidy and good. It's about running your business better. When your space is clutter-free and well-structured, you'll spend less time hunting for tools and materials and more time actually creating. Plus, when you're not constantly battling chaos, you'll feel less stressed and more inspired to create.
Let's face it, if I had all the time back that I spent hunting for that thing I know I ordered and received from Amazon to make this project, then I would probably have days more to spend on my business. Let's just face it.
Truly, or days off. I just take a day off for the amount of time I've spent hunting for my weeding hook.
The other day was working on some slate coasters and I could not find the package. And I literally turned everything upside down and then they were right in front of me. If I had just put them in my space for that, I probably could have found them a lot easier.
No, if something is in a bag, it's like the bag is automatically camouflaged when you're looking for it. You're like, where did I put that thing? And the bag is right in front of your face, but you're looking for the thing, so you don't see the bag. I don't know. I think this is probably something that scientists should study because it is hilarious how often I cannot find something just because it's in a shopping bag.
All right, so where do we start? We're gonna start with setting the foundation. So first of all, you're gonna want to define your workspace needs. What type of crafter are you? Paper craft, sewing, HTV. Consider the scale of your business here. Do you run it on the weekends, just at night? Is it a full-time gig for you? So kind of define your workspace and what you need to get out of it before you even start.
I think if we don't do it that way, we're just going to end up with problems because you're going to think, oh, I can run my whole business from my dining room table. And that gets really tough. So you may need to be very clever or I don't know what the word is, ingenious about maybe finding something around your house, like another space in your house to craft in, or you're going to have to figure out how to make it work. But knowing the scope of your business is a great place to start.
I feel like I often get trapped here as well I don't do a ton of sewing crafts. And so if I don't sort of define my space up front, I really love fabric and I want to keep it all. But I don't need that much fabric. I only need fabric occasionally for the random project. I definitely don't need probably even as much as I have at this point. So defining it up front for me also helps me in later steps of being like, hold on a second. This is an area for my business that uses HTV. I don't need this much fabric, and insert other craft supplies under that.
I have a very similar story. I was trying to find a place for some more sublimation blanks. I had purchased some for my business, trying to figure out where to put them. My mom was actually over and she opened up a cabinet and the entire cabinet is for sewing supplies. And she's like, you don't sew, you send stuff to my house to get sewed. I was like, yeah, but it's so pretty. And what if I do want to sew? And she's like, Cori, this is a valuable space that's being taken up in your craft room that you could be putting sublimation supplies in. And she's like, you have a bunch of empty drawers in your guest room. That's now becoming the sewing area because you don't need to access it all the time. And I was like, all right, Judy, that was a pretty good idea. Give it to my mom for that one.
When we're talking about setting the foundation, we do want to think about the importance of ergonomics. We can think about things like adjustable tables and chairs, proper lighting, tools like anti-fatigue mats for standing areas. Different things like this are going to make your life so much better. I can't stress that enough. As your craft business succeeds, you're going to be working more and more in this space. And without these tools, your back is going to suffer, your feet are going to suffer, your overall health is going to suffer. So I feel like keeping these things top of mind even if you can't afford these things right now and need to invest in them over time, but keep them in mind for investments you want to make in yourself and your business in the future.
And even if you don't have, $1,000 to invest in a super ergonomic chair or something like that, you can still make your setup more ergonomically friendly. So you want to make sure your keyboard is at the right height, your screen is at the right height, that you're moving your body. All of these things we talk about all the time because Angie and I think that your physical health impacts your business so much, and we talk about it a lot. And so if your back is constantly killing you because you're like this at the computer, I don't know if you can, nobody can see that on the podcast, but I got really close to my screen. Um, that's obviously really bad ergonomics, and your back is going to suffer. If you are sitting in a really terrible, if you're sitting in a wood dining chair to do all your work, maybe think about putting a pillow down, just something. Make these small changes to make your workspace better for your body. As two people here who have chronic conditions, we understand our bodies are constantly trying to work against us. So the more that we can do to work with our bodies instead of against our bodies, the better it's going to be.
Yeah. So, one thing I did right with this from almost the very beginning in my craft space, I did a table where I could have bar stools so I could sit or stand to work. So that way I could have sitting time, standing time, and have them both and whatever my body needed at the time I could do. And I feel like that is a very inexpensive thing to do. Like my husband built a table with some wood, some plywood, and some bar stools from Target is what I still have today. I still have that table. I still have those bar stools, and it has worked all of these years. And it was an inexpensive solution that was also ergonomic.
I feel like just thinking about it more will automatically make you realize when things hurt. Like for me, all of a sudden I realized I probably need computer glasses because I was getting closer and closer and closer to the screen to be able to read it. And I kept telling my chiropractor, I was like, my back, like up in my shoulder area is just killing me. And he's like, are you sitting like this? And I was like, yeah, I am. He's like, maybe you need glasses. Okay, Mr. Knows It All. So I now have a pair of glasses I can wear while sitting at the computer, and I'm not as hunched over as I was before. So just pay attention. Pay attention to what your body needs and do your best with your budget to give it what it wants.
So the next step in this foundation piece is going to be decluttering. And this is often a tough step in this foundation for people. There is definitely benefits, psychological productivity to a clean space. And I also feel there's psychological things to letting go and being able to let go of those craft supplies that maybe you've been hanging on to. So let's talk about strategies of letting go of unused tools and supplies. I feel like that first one was good. So you tailored your space. You're going to tailor your space to the type of crafter you are. And then you're going to think about all those sewing supplies when you never sew. You're going to think about that clay. I probably still have clay somewhere where I would maybe craft with different clay crafts, and I haven't done those in over 2 years. I find it beneficial for me to think about the last time I used them. When's the last time I opened that box? When's the last time I pulled out that bin? If it's been a substantial amount of time, it might just be time to let go.
I think for me, it is realizing that the things that I have could benefit someone way more than they're benefiting me. So I have all these sewing supplies. Am I not using them? I do sew occasionally, so I'm going to keep the basics on hand. But if I wanted to get rid of some of the fabric I have that I'm never going to use, there are so many quilters out there. I've got such nice fabric. Somebody could actually really use it and enjoy it instead of it just literally sitting in a closet. It's like, yeah, somebody else will do this. So I feel like I've gotten rid of quite a bit of stuff in my craft room actually over the last month or two as I've gone through this sort of spring cleaning, beginning of the year sort of situation. I realize we're recording this in January, but it's March while this is going out. So we're in January now. And I have been doing a lot of sort of spring cleaning, reorganizing, trying to figure out where things go. And I've had to let go of a lot of things I've had for a really long time, both furniture that I thought was like, this is the best piece of furniture for organizing. It's amazing. I love it so much. And it's now doesn't work in my space anymore because I've got other things that work better for what I have now. But yeah, it's if I can think like, okay, somebody else is really going to get much better use out of this than I am, and I'm just moving this around my craft room, being annoyed by it, I can let it go.
And for me, another strategy here is to think about the shelf life of some of these items. Some of these items deteriorate over time. If I have an excessive amount of, say, epoxy resin is a great example, HTV is another great example. If I have an excessive amount that I'm not going to use in a fairly quick time frame, it's probably just going to go to waste because it's not going to work anymore. So I also try to think about that as I'm going through my space. What do I have an excessive amount of that I'm not going to use? And could I benefit someone with that excess?
Another fun way to think about it is what can I put in that space instead? Whether you already have something or maybe you're thinking about getting something, if you're like, oh, I don't have room for that big heat press, maybe you do have room for that big heat press if you just let go of something that you haven't been using as much. Whatever that is, you can think of it as like, not, oh, I'm losing this, but hey, maybe I'm gaining the space to do something that I really love right now.
And I would encourage you, if you're going to donate this stuff, I love to find people that can really use it. Schools are a great example. I donate a ton to schools. I just post like a free for all on Facebook because I love to see people get into new crafts. Locally here, there is like a craft reuse center. You donate your supplies and you can pick up other supplies. I tend to just donate at the door so I don't walk in and just start splurging on the other things. So I just donate and say, here, take it, give it to someone that will appreciate it. You can also sell some of the bigger items, of course, on Facebook Marketplace or something like that. So you can sell those things to invest in larger equipment that perhaps you have space for now. So those are just a few of the ideas on places to donate or sell.
I love our local Buy Nothing group on Facebook. Most areas have a Buy Nothing group, literally in the title. Give stuff for free, get stuff for free. They are awesome. I've been able to donate so much, and several times people have shown me what they've made with the supplies or I've donated or how something looks in their new space. And it's just really lovely. All right, so let's talk next about structuring that workspace. So we know kind of what workspace we're working with. We know what's going to go in it. We've hopefully gotten rid of some of the stuff that we don't need anymore. So what's it going to look like? And we're going to talk about zones. So we need all sorts of zones when we're running a small business. You're going to need like an actual crafting work zone where you're going to, cut and assemble and package or do all those things. You might need a computer zone where you're going to do design and fulfill orders, upload stuff to Etsy, that sort of thing. A shipping zone where you might have, you know, shipping materials that tends to take up a lot of space. And then like storage zones where you're going to put all the stuff that have either already made or all the materials and supplies to make something.
So thinking about these zones and making sure that they relate back to your business. So go back to the tips we talked about before, right? So if you're doing these zones for me, if I have my sewing machine in one of these zones, then that space is laid out incorrectly. So what I've done is I've taken my sewing machine and I've put it in the closet. Do I need a sewing machine in my life? I absolutely do. I enjoy sewing occasionally. I don't sew for my YouTube channel. I don't sew for my business. I sew for pleasure. I do need it. However, it doesn't need to be directly in my craft room or craft area. It can be in a storage closet. It could be in completely another room in a closet. Just so long as it's accessible, I can pull it out. I can, sew on my kitchen table when I need to, but it doesn't need to be part of this business area.
I definitely have my workspace broken out into zones so much that my boys have named the zones in my office. Let's see if I can name them correctly. We have Laser Lane. They want to make street signs. We have Cricket Court. That's back here. There's crickets back here. And you can't go out this way. So it's a court. You have to like go in, but you have to go back out that way. Heat Press Hill is on the other side of the room over there. Assembly Avenue, which is where I package all of my things. It's basically a big empty table with all my shipping supplies underneath. And then I do have a space for like where all of my Etsy stuff lives. And I don't know if that has a name yet, but yeah. So I definitely have zones enough that my boys were like, this is what those zones are and we can name them, which I thought was I was like, okay, I'm zoning correctly. If two 9-year-olds are like, we can name all the different zones in your office.
So my actual craft room is fairly small. It's not as large as Corey's. And I will say that I have to break the zoning rule a little bit. So like heat presses can't all go physically into this one space because I need, my craft table in the middle. So you might have to break up your zones, was my point, into like a couple of different spots if you are small space challenged, like
I think
some of
that's
us are.
totally valid. I mean, I've decided to, this is kind of has to do with this, but like I'm not going to be a one pair of scissors girl. I now have a pair of scissors in each zone. I have, I don't know, 10 tape measures. I bought a pack of little cheap tape measures on Amazon and they are everywhere in here. There's a weeding hook at every turn. Like all of these things that I use fairly often. There is a craft knife basically in all the zones because I don't want to be in my shipping zone and be like, oh, I need to open a box and have to walk over to this here to grab, this pair of scissors to open the box. I want to easily access all of these things I use all the time. And that really is a tape measure, a craft knife, and a pair of scissors are kind of the three big ones, and a weeding hook. I have one of those in each area too. Those four things live in at least five places in my office because I just don't want to have to spend my time walking around looking for the one tape measure I have. I was like, you know what? This is like $5, Corey. Buy yourself more tape measures. Get yourself more scissors. They don't have to be expensive. They're just for opening boxes and cutting random things. I have some nice pairs of scissors back here if I really want to do something nice. But yeah, that has like saved me so much time by just adding those few extra supplies that I use all the time in all the zones. I do have a very big space. I should also admit. So I should also mention that I'm working in a much larger space than most people are.
That's why I wanted to mention us people that might be small space challenged.
Yes, you are. It's very valid. I'm very, very lucky to have this space, but it is very zonable in here. So I'm doing the zones.
So next, let's talk about designing a production line, and this is one of my favorite topics. So if you're doing batch production, if you are producing things like for your Etsy shop, designing your space in a production line sort of layout is one of my favorite ways to do it. So you could, let's say that I'm making HTV shirts, then you might have your Cricut machines or maybe your computer station first, then your Cricut machines, then a weaving station, then a station with your heat press, and then maybe a station where you do like some packaging or folding. So if you have these all laid out in a line, in a U shape would be optimal. Then all of a sudden you can start at one end and you come out at the other end with your finished product. Having them like this allows you to, like, while it's heat pressing, you can be over at this station doing something else and you're right there by the heat press. And you can use like carts, rolling tables, that type of thing to lay this out. So you can change it and alter it as your business changes, or perhaps your product changes. Like, I'm making shirts today, but I need to make sublimation something tomorrow. So I'm going to roll my Cricut cart out and I'm going to roll my sublimation printer cart in, and I still have my production line going on.
I just set up some tables in here in a U shape, and I cannot believe it has taken me this long to do it. It is the most useful amount of table space. I had to buy two more big tables, but I mean, I'm doing quite a bit of production in here now. And I was just like, I set up this U shape and I was like, Corey, this is it. But I can guarantee you in a year, I'm going to be like, I have to move everything around again.
So
Things change.
I mean, like, we haven't talked about this a ton, but my degree's in engineering and like my specialty was this type of thing. So laying out production lines and efficiency and that type of thing. And if you all would just put your stuff in a U shape, I would be so much happier.
I love this. I feel like we should do an episode on the U, getting everything in the U shape. It really is just, it has really, really improved a lot of my working here. All right. So now we're going to talk about maximizing small spaces. I have not always had such a great space. I have about 600 square feet above our garage, big open layout. I'm incredibly lucky. It is one of the main reasons we purchased this house was like Corey gets a big craft space to run her business. However, I started at my dining table. In our last house, I had a 10 by 10 bedroom, and that felt like I was king because I had my own space versus the dining room table. And then we moved here, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to do with this space. And I easily filled it. But there are a lot of ways to sort of maximize those small spaces. And my number one way is sitting right behind me. For those of you watching on YouTube, is a giant pegboard. I love pegboards. I've got two other big ones in here. They are so helpful for maximizing that vertical space. I have them between windows where a piece of furniture wouldn't even fit. So I feel like that is my number one tip is, and they're not that expensive to get some pegboards and put them up, and they hold so many supplies.
And vertical space could look like bookshelves. I mean, just anything to get that height, and even like a table with a shelf above it. I've utilized that in some of my spaces just anything to get the height of the room. If everything is just at a desk level, you are losing so much storage space. And I utilize things like the back of the doors, like any space that's in my room, I'm going to utilize it with some type of hanging organizer, pegboard, just any type of organizer that will hold craft supplies and keep them somehow manageable.
I am a huge fan of the PAX IKEA cabinets. So these are closet cabinets. This is great if you don't have the budget for something like a dream box. I mean, Angie and I both have, well, I have half a dream box and Angie has a whole dream box. But that's out of a lot of people's budget. If it's in your budget, I mean, we love them. However, an IKEA cabinet will hold so much. And you can just put big plastic bins in there. They come with, some of them have big drawers. I've got all my vinyl in one, and they are significantly less expensive. So, and that's a great way because they're so tall that you can get a lot of vertical space in an IKEA cabinet or another type of cabinet because they're so tall. Mine almost goes to the ceiling.
Yeah, I will say I put off getting a dream box for a long time. I'm going to use a dream box as an example, but this could be any type of investment into organizational furniture. So if you're putting off that investment into organizational furniture, it was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made because it really helps to actually organize the things and like get so much into a tiny space. So I would encourage you to think about the investment, whether it's over time or not, of organizational furniture. It will just make your life so much easier. And I feel like I put off making a good investment. I basically reused old furniture from other spaces for the longest time. Oh, that bookshelf, I don't need it in the living room. Well, let's just put that in the craft room, even if it didn't work for the space. So think about things that will work for your space, things that are within your budget, and making those investments over time.
I would say another really good investment to make, and it actually is not incredibly expensive, especially compared to something like a Dreambox, is a very solid work table. I feel like we end up working at card tables, dining tables. We bring a dining table into our craft space. We end up working on a really crappy little IKEA table with four tiny $4 legs, and it just doesn't work. But there are so many reasonably priced workbenches on Amazon and other places right now. I have Gladiator tables, which are not cheap, but I also have one that I just bought because I was like, I need a table and I don't want to spend Gladiator dollars. So I'm going to buy another work table. It's holding two lasers right now. And that thing is really solid. And it really, and it's like $150 maybe, which I realize is still out of the budget for some people, but like it's adjustable. So it can go up and down depending on how high I need it to be. I have it at a standing height so I can work at it. And it's just so much sturdier and easier to work around than something like a dining table. A dining table has a big empty space in the middle. You can only like work around the edge, right? I mean, you can put stuff in the middle, but with a workbench, it's a long, it's a long sort of table that you can work from both sides really easily. They're easy to move around. You can fit them in a lot of configurations. So I'm a huge fan of the workbench.
And I do feel like if anyone in your life can cut wood and assemble it, the workbench is like the first place you need to go because it's easily like 2x4 legs and a plywood top would be so much better cut to size, a size that works for your space and for you than probably what you're using today. And I've actually started you can purchase metal legs on Amazon very inexpensively. And it comes with cutting instructions for the wood to actually support shelves. And you can do several shelves on these. And I've actually started purchasing those because it comes with cut instructions. The legs are metal, very sturdy, holds a ton of weight. So I can use heat presses, printers, all these heavy things I can put directly on these work tables. And they're super inexpensive. And it's like one of the best hacks that I've found lately.
We'll have to link to those down in the description of the
Yeah.
video and the podcast notes. And I'll link to the cheap workbench that I have as well, because I don't know, I feel like workspace tables is a place where people a lot of times skimp because they're like, I'm just going to use my dining table. Or, I mean, I worked off the crappiest IKEA work table forever. I still have it. It has like legs that I screw on every time I need to use it. And the top I've used just so much that it's bowing in the middle. But it worked for the beginning. But after a while, I was like, you know what? I need something that's actually not going to collapse if I put something slightly heavy on it. And I found that the workbench, for me at least, having it be a much narrower in depth has been a much better solution.
And then if you are doing that where you're like working wherever you can, something that's foldable and on wheels is a wonderful solution. And I mean, Create Room makes one, but they also sell one at Michael's that's completely foldable. You can put your Cricut machine, it has little shelves for all your accessories, and then the ends fold out into a work surface. So I feel like anything like that that's foldable will give you a much better area to work on. And let's face it, a clean area. If you have to fold it up, store it, you have to clean it off. And so there's no more waiting on whether my dining room table is clean or not to craft. You fold that up and you are ready to go.
I feel like getting a clean work surface is difficult for most crafters, whether it's your kitchen island or it's one of my many work tables in this office. There's if it's a flat surface, stuff's going to go there, no matter what. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how to maintain a clean space, but I do think that is a challenge.
All right, so now it's time for our commercial break, and we are going to talk about a new camp that we have going on right now. So, if you're familiar with our camps, we have done Sublimation Camp, we've done Crafting for Profit Camp, and we wanted something new and exciting for everyone. And so, we are introducing Craft Organization Camp because we want to help you organize your craft supplies.
This is become a huge camp. We have at least 20 different creators. A lot of them have been guests here on the podcast. We have, I think at last count, there are more than 30 classes. And the best part, it is free to attend.
So, March 20th to 22nd, 2025, you can attend for free, and you could sign up for your free ticket at craftorganizationcamp.com. Now, if you are finding this after March 20th to 22nd, don't worry, we have options for you as well. So, the free access, March 20th to 22nd, you can watch all of the videos. You can download the resources that we have. However, maybe you want extended access. You're busy that weekend. You can't fit all of these amazing classes into that weekend. You want to review them over time. We have a VIP pass for you as well. So it starts right now. It will go up in price from there. And even if you find this after March 2025, we will have it for sale for the full price as well.
This is so exciting. I feel like when we pitched this to some of our speakers, I don't know if we've ever gotten such a fast response for any of our events. Everybody's like, no, I'm in, I'm in, I'm in. We love organizing. Got to organize. It's awesome. I was so excited by the response just from our speakers. So we have some really, really wonderful speakers this time. We will have some great sponsors as well. All you have to do is go to Craft Organization Camp, get your free ticket for this virtual event, and we will see you there.
Yep. And of course, all the stuff we're talking about will be expanded on in there. So let's talk about organizing for efficiency now, including labeling and inventory management. And I mean, I've already talked about how I'm not good at inventory management, so this ought to be really good.
So let's start by talking about labeling. Guys, out of sight, out of mind, right? I feel like all of us, if we put something in a drawer, like we were saying, if it's in a bag, I'm not going to see it, which is why we need to make sure that we're labeling everything. Yes, it is a pain in the butt, but it's important. And you don't need a fancy, like make all these beautiful labels with your Cricut. You don't even need a label maker. Post-its. Just start with Post-its, whatever works, little tabs. My husband bought a label maker and it was like one of the happiest days of my life. So now I have a label maker. So I've been putting little labels all over things. My boys love the label maker. So I tell them what to make. And then they're like, use the little label maker and label stuff for me. Because if you don't label stuff, you're just never going to know where it is.
One of my tricks is to use chalkboard labels in my crafting space because I change so often. Like, you never know what I'm going to get into or be interested in. And I was so tired of trying to peel off labels or peel off vinyl because I had made it pretty, and chalkboard labels, and I could write on it with a chalkboard marker. It doesn't rub away. And then when I'm done with it, I just use some water, get rid of it, relabel it. So I found that's the easiest thing for me. And I do love my label maker and I do use it in some spaces, but the chalkboard labels like have my heart.
That's a great idea. I like the label maker because it all comes off in one piece. Because if you've ever labeled anything with vinyl, so cute. But the second you want to switch something, then you're just like, scraping it off. And you're like, do I really need this bin? No. What? I just turn it around and label it on the other side. So I do feel like labeling, great place to start. Make sure you're labeling everything because you don't know what's in that closet. Absolutely not. You need to know. And then we're talking about digital tools for inventory management. So this is a problem for both me and Angie. Like, what do we actually have? Yes, we can label it, but like, how many mugs are actually in that box? I have a big box. It has 5 mugs in it. You would think there was 24 mugs in it, but you can't tell unless you open it up. So this is something I think we're both going to work on this year and hopefully come up with some good solutions so that we can bring them to you because this is an area where we both need to improve. But there are, different apps you can try and use: Airtable, Notion, Google Doc.
I feel like it would be amazing because I'm constantly like, I want to do this project. Do I have the stuff to do the project? I have no idea. Let me go find it and try to see. And if it was easily accessible for me to know what I have, I feel like it would save me so much time, but it's just the doing of the inventory.
Yeah, right. I mean, every time I craft with something, am I going to mark down what I used? It's probably getting into it using a system, right? We use so many systems in so many areas of our businesses. It's just implementing a new system and getting used to marking it down. But since that system is not currently implemented, it becomes becomes a huge hurdle. So it's something we both need to work on. We got to come up with a solution.
Yeah. And am I guilty of purchasing like 3, 4 times the amount I need for a project? Absolutely. Because I didn't know I had it and I ordered it. And then I didn't know I had it again, maybe, and ordered it. Like, yeah.
Did you ever see that viral TikTok video about the guy who buys like 5 bottles of hoisin sauce? That's how I feel in my craft room sometimes. I was like, I'll even say, I was like, oh, it's the hoisin sauce problem. It's, also, I have like 3 bottles of hoisin sauce. So I know that this is a very specific problem for refrigerators, but it also happens in my craft room.
I do that with, I do this all over my home, like in the kitchen. And my son, the other day, he was like, oh, great, you brought more mayonnaise to add to the other bottles of mayonnaise.
I feel like this is so true. But then all of a sudden, like one day I'm out of mayonnaise and I'm like, see, this is why I continue to buy mayonnaise because I've got 2 kids who eat mayonnaise on everything.
That's what I said. The worst thing that could possibly happen in life is to run out of mayonnaise. That's what I said. That was my answer.
I love it. That's amazing. All right. So then we talked a little bit about how we are going to maintain our clean space. This is probably the hardest thing for a lot of people. You work so hard to get it organized. And then like 3 days later, you're like, why did I even do that? It's a disaster again. So there are just some different ways that you can do this. I've talked about this so many times on the podcast, but I set myself timers to clean during the day. I will sit for 20 minutes and then I will clean for 5 minutes, sit for 20 minutes, clean for 5 minutes on whatever I'm doing. I found that that actually helps me maintain a base level of tidiness in here. That's my method. What do you do, Angie?
I try to do a daily reset at the end of the day, is what I always call it. Basically, where I clean surfaces and try to unbox things. I do have a weekly thing in my calendar as well. So I have to put these things in my calendar or it's just not going to happen. So there's a daily reset in my calendar. And then weekly, I have something that I call like the unbox and basically an inventory type of thing, although I don't track inventory. But I unbox everything that's came in and try to put it away, make sure I have the things for our next project. And that's like perfect world Angie. Both of those things are perfect world Angie. I'm just going to be honest right now. Sometimes life gets busy, and the very first thing to go off my calendar is the weekly unboxing. That's the very, like, if I get busy, that's the very first thing to go. So I do want to note that while that sounds really perfect and a really great idea, it's just not always reality.
It isn't reality, and stuff's going to be messy. Crafters are messy, right? It's just the nature of doing a craft. You can't do it. Like, crafts aren't tidy. They're just going to get everywhere, and you're going to need supplies and tools, and it's going to have packaging, and it's just going to be everywhere. So I think it's just kind of one of those things that we just have to accept the reality of, right? We can say having an perfectly organized space is going to change your entire life. And yeah, it'll make things a lot easier, but like, we're still going to be messy. We're still going to have to clean up a lot. But I think just maybe scheduling it into your day, that kind of thing. One of the other things that I do is if I'm doing something like, say, with a heat press, I'm like, okay, this is a 2-minute press. What can I clean in 2 minutes? And then I'll like set like a little challenge for myself to tidy things up. Or I do a lot of like, oh, I have to walk to the other side of the room. This goes on the other side of the room. I'm just going to carry it with me. Okay, now that I'm on the other side of the room and I have to walk back, what am I going to carry with me? I play this game in my house all the time. My boys think I'm crazy because I'm always just carrying random things around the house, but it's just become a habit for me. As when I'm leaving one part of wherever I am to go to another part, I've got something in my hand.
I will say that time lapse videos are extremely satisfying. Your phone probably has a time lapse mode on the camera, and you can set it up somewhere so you can see your space and set your timer for 15 minutes. And at the end of that 15 minutes, watch that time lapse. And it is extremely satisfying way to reward yourself. And that's, I've sort of become hooked on that. And I even have, now I have a little tool that my phone will follow me around my craft room. That's how addicted I am to little time lapses.
That is amazing, and I want you to link to that in the description because I want one of those because I do time lapses all the time. The best thing about a time lapse is you can't be on your phone while you're on the time lapse. And the other thing is when I'm on a time lapse and I know I might share it on Instagram or somewhere, I don't want to get on my computer in the middle of a time lapse. So it like keeps that accountability thing that we've talked about in other episodes. Like, okay, this is cleaning time. And it's pretty amazing how much you can clean when you do not have a device in front of you.
It's also amazing how much you can do in just 15 minutes. But it's like the mental hurdle of like, oh my gosh, this space looks insane. Like, I don't even know where to start. And I often get that way. Like, I don't know where to start with something. And so I'll just walk away. But my strategy is just to start in one area. So start with the surface and clean it off. And that often leads me to something else, right? So I'm cleaning the surface and I find two mugs and they need to go in the mug bin, and I pull the mug bin out and I'm like, oh, well, I could also put this thing that's randomly in the floor below the mugs away. So it often sort of leads me down a path.
Yeah, I tend to clean in the same zones that I have my office organized in. And from before I was moving my camera around from zone to zone to zone, but now I want your special movie camera thing. But yeah, I find if I can just get like one surface clean, then I'm like, okay, this is a good start because I can work on this table now or whatever it is. And I have to say, this is very embarrassing, but like the floors in here are the worst because one, I don't have a Roomba or anything like that. So, and I have a giant dog. And even though he is afraid to come in here most of the time, his hair is everywhere in here. And so I did like, I put everything up on all the tables a while back when I was doing my big spring clean. I put everything up on the tables and I vacuumed and then I mopped and I was like, oh, I can physically see a difference in these floors. It was so bad. But I was like, oh, that actually felt really good though, because like seeing the difference of before and after, there was like glitter glue on the floor and all sorts of stuff. It was pretty bad. All right. So then let's move into sort of mindset workflow tips. You know, we're really big into mindset. It sounds really kind of out there, but when you change your mindset, it actually works. Darn it. As much as we would like to say it doesn't, it really does. So, one of the things that you should start with is to create a space and a workflow that you love. When you are working in a space, in a workflow that you love, you are actually going to enjoy working a lot more than if you are fighting against your space. So it doesn't need to be like a rainbow color coded, organized giant thing. The main reason that my office is rainbow coded is mostly because I take pictures of it all the time. But there are parts of it that I'm like, you don't, if you open up one of those cabinets over there, it's just full of sublimation supplies. It's not very attractive, but it works. But I work in a space that I really enjoy, and that makes it really easy for me to come into work every morning and get started and feel creative. And I think that's just so much better than walking into a dark space with a bunch of colors I don't like or art on the walls I don't like and just being grumbly about it.
I feel like a happy space makes you want to clean it rather than the opposite. Like if it's a very dark space that is very cluttered, I just am like, I don't even want to go in there. So yeah. So I want a space where I want to go in it. I want to keep it clean. And that way I want to craft in it as well. No matter if you're a small business owner or just crafting for fun, you want a space that you are excited and energized to go into. It will just make your life so much easier. And that can be like we talked about organization, furniture, and things, but also just like make yourself some fun art for the walls. Make yourself some things you enjoy, craft for yourself, and decorate your space. And one thing for me that I've done is my craft space is completely different from the rest of my house. And I think, Cori, you're the same.
Absolutely.
So
My house is a cabin.
yeah, it's like the decorating style in the rest of my home is completely different. You are just like energized and charged when you walk in, and the rest of my space is very serene and farmhouse style. And that is okay. You are allowed in this space to be you, whether that is a closed door space or maybe it's just a section of your living room. Still allow yourself a little leeway within that space.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to figure out what you love. And I think a lot of times we follow trends and we do all these things, but like what do you actually love? Like my mom, she's great. She really loves red and yellow. And I'm like, "Mom, I love your ketchup and mustard decor." Right? It's not for me, but she loves it and she painted her craft room yellow. It's not a color I would ever use in my own craft room just because it's not my preference. But she is so happy when she goes in there to make purses. Like you could just tell it's like this is a very Judy space and it's really nice.
One thing I want to say, I love your mom for painting her room yellow. I really do. However, keep in mind that the tint on your walls can tint your photography. So if
This
you
is a good
are,
point.
yeah, if you're taking pictures of the things that you sell for online use, the color of your walls can tint the entire space visually and tint the photography and throw off the white balance. And I learned that the hard way. So I'm just going to like throw that in
That's
there.
a really good point. She does have a light box. So she takes all of her photos in this giant light box. And before she would come down here, she actually, for up until just a couple months ago, she was taking all of her photos in my office because, again, it's not yellow here. All right. And one of the other things we wanted to mention music, podcasts, audiobooks, just the sounds that exist, white noise, whatever it is, make it sound good in there too. For me, it's almost always an audiobook if I'm not doing something that is like where I need my brain to be typing or something like that. I always have an audiobook going on in here, and it's how I read so many books a year. But that's just me. I know music is super energizing to a lot of people. Throw on some Taylor Swift, throw on some Beatles, whatever you want. Um, and it just really can change the atmosphere of your entire workspace.
One other thing that motivates me is if I pick an audiobook I want to read and then say I can only listen to this audiobook when I'm cleaning my craft room. Boy, I can get some cleaning done because I want to read that book. I want to finish that book and I can stay on task if I like just motivate myself that way.
I love that so much. I should do that as well. This is my audiobook for cleaning.
You cannot allow yourself to listen to that outside of that cleaning time and you will totally be motivated.
This would be the cleanest space you've ever seen. Get a really good book, like a really long, really good book, some fantasy epic.
Yes,
That's
then
like, are you ever coming back inside? No.
no, I'm cleaning.
It's, I'm cleaning. It's very, very difficult.
All right, next one is another one of my favorite topics is time blocking. So time blocking for tasks is one of the ways I stay productive and scheduling specific times for all the things. So whether that is production, administrative tasks, also add cleaning and time to straighten up within those time blocks. And that way you're for sure to do it. So I daily add in like a sort of clear the surfaces type time and then weekly add another time. So that's what I do. Whatever works for you, I just encourage you to add that time in. And that way you won't just sort of not keep your space up. Once you get it organized, let's keep it organized.
Yeah. I do the same thing, but on this much smaller scale with the little timer. It's like 5 minutes of cleaning, 20 minutes of working. It's just like this process all day. I mean, the fact that we've been sitting here recording this for 45 minutes, I'm like, office is getting messy while I'm just sitting here. So I'm losing out on my, my 5 minute cleanings for the day.
And I'm speaking of the timers though, everyone needs one of the little flip timers. So it's like a little cube and it depends on the timer you purchase. So mine has like 5, 15, 30 or something on the sides. And all you have to do is flip it to the 15 side and the timer automatically starts for 15 minutes. And that for me has been a lifesaver because like if I'm expected to put a timer on my phone and then my phone is usually on silent, so I don't even hear it go off when it's done.
That timer is such a silly thing, and it has made one of the biggest differences in my entire life. I have one in the house now too, because I'll do the same thing. I'll sit down to do a puzzle, I'll puzzle for 20 minutes, and then I'll spend 10 minutes folding laundry because I need to move my body. And that's really the catalyst for all of this for me was not necessarily that I need to do chores and have off time. It's that because I have fibromyalgia, I have to stand up and move around or else my hips will like fuse into place and be really cranky. And so I got this timer basically to move my body, but now it has very much changed how much I get done around the house when it comes to chores, when it comes to cleaning my studio, all of these things. I'm like, man, that was like the best little purchase I think I've made.
They're so inexpensive and you can literally use them to stay on task. So like you can get lost in the scroll if you just allow yourself to scroll social media all the time. So set a timer. I'm allowing myself 15 minutes to enjoy my Instagram. And then once that timer goes off, I have to get off.
It's also a good way. I have used it for cleaning different parts of my craft room as well. Or it's like, okay, I don't want to clean out this closet. Like I have a closet that I really do need to clean out. I don't want to clean it out, but I'm going to just spend 15 minutes on it. Then I'm going to go do some other stuff, but like I have to spend the 15 minutes from the timer on the closet or else it's never going to get done. And again, I set a timer on my phone. It doesn't work. It's the cube. It's the cube. The magic of the cube.
Definitely the magic of the cube. And then finally, for your mindset, making your space inspiring. Now, whether that's personal touches like we talked about, like making yourself some art, or even the goal reminders, your business goals, even like a daily inspirational quote. So I have a little calendar. It's a perpetual calendar, so I never have to change it out. And you just flip it to the next day, and it has some type of inspirational message on it. Small, inexpensive. I got it super cheap. And it's been one of those things that sort of keeps me motivated in my space. And then vision boards is another great idea. So anything that's going to make your space speak to you, I feel like would fall into this category. And that way you just want to keep your space cleaner when it's inspiring.
Yeah, I feel like also having those, personal touches, whatever, it makes it also feel just like slightly less like work. Because sometimes we get in and we're like, I have to make 500 mugs. And your brain is like, okay, I got to do this. But if you have that podcast or that music or whatever going, if you have live plants, I'm a huge fan of plants in every place you can put them. You can learn how to grow a plant, I promise. I had the blackest thumb and I decided I'm going to be better at this. And so I killed a lot of plants in the process and now I can grow plants.
I feel
So
like
I
get a snake plant. That's all you need to do.
snake plant, my favorite is a peace lily because they are dramatic. They're like, I need water. And they like will completely get flat. And then you water them and like 2 hours later, they're like, never fine. I'm totally fine. And so I do feel like bringing life, open a window, bring in some fresh air, like anything you can do to just create life and vitality in your space, in addition to all your fun, crafty stuff. I feel like that's just something that you can do to really help your mindset of making this like a holistic journey. Sounds so woo woo, but it's like, okay, I'm breathing in fresh air. I'm creating. I'm making something beautiful. I'm running my business. I've got my quotes. I've got all the things, and it's just a better vibe.
I did want to mention lighting here. I feel like lighting's so important for crafting overall, just being able to see things. But if your space doesn't have natural light, using like daylight bulbs often helps me sort of tricks my mind into feeling, more awake, more like it's daytime. And I feel like that's just one of the tricks I use, like just overall in my home for dark spaces is to use like a daylight bulb. So I would encourage you to like look at your lighting as well. I feel like it can make or break a craft space.
Absolutely. I mean, I live in the darkest place, right? I live as far northwest as you can get in the United States, and it is really dark here in the winter. And we're currently in January, like I said, and it is the darkest time of year. And so basically, all my light is going to be fake light. And so having, as we turn on a lot of lights in the winter just to kind of make it happier and brighter and remind ourselves that the sun is coming back, at some point, and we have hope.
All right, so I think that's a wrap on today's episode of Crafting for Profit Live. We hope you're inspired to tackle your workspace, turn it into that productivity powerhouse for your business. And we do want you to remember that even small changes can make a big difference in how smoothly your craft business runs. And like we said, if you want to join us for even more, be sure to check out Craft Organization Camp, and that's craftorganizationcamp.com to get your ticket.
If you love today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps us reach more crafty entrepreneurs. If you want to share your workspace transformation, tag us on Instagram using the hashtag crafting for profit. We also have Crafting Camp's Instagram and Facebook now. So this is kind of exciting. We now have our own social accounts, which we probably should have set up a long time ago, but we're not going to talk about that. But you can tag us at Crafting Camps on Instagram and Facebook. So if you are interested, you can go ahead and do that. And we would love to see the progress of your room.
So tune in next time. We'll have a podcast in 2 weeks, and we're not sure about the topic yet. So it'll be a surprise to all of us. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter so you get all of those updates. You will find a newsletter sign up in the description below the video or in the podcast notes to sign up, and we'll send you information about our next episode. So until next time, happy crafting and happy organizing.